Her perfume on the hotel key. The hotel key was under my pillow like a secret with edges. It lay there, cool and plastic against the sheet, light enough to pretend it wasn't real. The logo, an ink blue dahlia, glowed faintly in the morning light, and when I lifted it, the ribbon of scent that came with it was not mine. It was Lila's perfume, the one that opens with citrus and ends with a promise. I held it up the way a person holds up a coin they didn't put in the fountain. Lila was in my t-shirt at the stove, hair looped into a knot, humming while the kettle clicked itself awake. She turned when she felt me looking. "You lose something?" she asked, voice easy too easy. "Found something," I said. I set the key on the counter between us. Who puts hotel keys under someone else's pillow? Her eyes skimmed the dahlia and then my face with the same practiced smoothness she uses on clients when their logos are wrong but their money is right. "That's from the launch," she said. "The dahlia hired the agency's bar for the after-after. They handed those out as drink tokens. Cute, right? I must have forgotten to toss it." I wanted the story to sound more true than it did. "Drink tokens go in your purse," I said, "not under my pillow." "Eli," she said, soft, the sound you use to calm a spooked animal. "We came home late. I crawled in so I wouldn't wake you. Maybe it fell out of my pocket. Don't turn a mishap into a mystery." I nodded as if she'd helped solve something. I kissed her cheek and tasted sleep and lemon, the faithful flavors of our mornings. But the key in my palm insisted on being exactly what it was. At the studio, my day filled itself with specifics. A backdrop that refused to stay flat. A client who wanted more glow and less truth. The thump of bass from the space next door where someone made furniture out of reclaimed promise. Between edits, I looked up the dahlia. The site was a brochure for people who like mirrors and never ask who is standing behind them. The bar's name, Lilt, was printed in bone-white serif over photos of cocktails that looked like sunset rehearsals. At 2:11, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "If you want to know whose room your jacket slept in, meet me at Lilt at 8. Wear something that tells the truth." I stared at the sentence until it formed a second meaning. Then I typed, "Who is this?" The dots appeared and disappeared, flirting with becoming a person. A minute later, "Not your wife, not your enemy, someone who has also been told a pretty story. 8. I put the key in my pocket and let it sit there all afternoon like a companion with bad timing. On the train home, I watched couples hold each other with the lightest parts of their hands. Lila texted a photo of a bakery box with a ribbon, the caption "This city makes up for itself," and a heart. I typed a heart back and didn't send it. The key warmed against my hip. The Dahlia is one of those hotels that looks like it recognizes you even if it doesn't. The doorman nodded as if my name was in the book. Inside, light slid over everything as if there were no bad angles. Lilt was at the back, beyond a hallway of framed black and white photographs of people who had once been famous for being photographed. The bar itself was a long stroke of dark wood with lamps shaped like upside-down tulips. Conversations made a soft weather sound. Ice cracked in glasses like smarter applause. She was waiting in the corner booth, a woman with hair the color of a late afternoon and a mouth that looked like it had opinions. She wore a silk blouse the shade of good secrets and a jacket that suggested she knew how to leave. "You must be Eli," she said, standing. "I'm Clara." I had seen Clara once at a distance, at an agency holiday thing where people practiced sincerity. She was with a man who laughed with his whole chest. Owen, art director, Lila's almost every day. He'd thrown an arm around Lila's shoulders like she was an inside joke. I'd practically made myself clap. "You have something of mine," Clara said and reached into her pocket. She held out a dahlia key. Or I have something of yours, depending on which pillow you think it belongs under. Where did you find it? I asked. Under my bed, she said, then watched me while I learned how to breathe again. I cleaned this morning, vacuumed like I was going to be graded, found it nestled near the wall. The last time I vacuumed was the weekend before last. The last time Owen said he had to stay late to problem-solve typography with Lila was the weekend before last. The room hummed around us like it didn't care who we were. A small laugh escaped me because laughter is what I do when thunder is in the room, and I'm the only one who hears it. Maybe typography really does need a hotel, I said. Clara's smile was gentle and tired. Maybe it needs to be told the truth. Are you ready to see what we're dealing with? I don't want to orchestrate a scene, I said, but I'm also done with pretending we don't know where the exits are. She nodded like we were choosing seats for a show we didn't want to watch. Be quiet about it, she said. Let's watch how they move. People tell you what they're doing with their shoulders. We didn't have to wait long. At 8:37, the bar door sighed and they walked in. Lila in the black dress that has a way of moving that makes strangers rethink their lives. Owen in navy, easy, a man whose cologne announced the weather 2 minutes early. They didn't touch. They didn't have to. It was in the way he bent toward her as if she were the answer he'd been having trouble hearing. Clara's hand found the back of the booth, her fingers just behind my shoulder. The closeness grounded me. It also turned up the volume on the part of me that remembers being touched. We can leave, she said. We can decide we don't need to be detectives. I may have already decided something, I said, and I didn't know what it was until I felt it take shape. Let's make it hard for them to pretend we're furniture. How? She asked. Dance with me, I said. There was no dance floor, just a space between wanting and good sense. But a slow song settled over the room like a scarf, and people made room for the idea that bodies need excuses. I stood and held my hand out. Clara looked at it for a second, long enough to take responsibility for her yes, and then she stood. We moved in a small circle near the banquette, a quiet orbit. Her hand was warm in mine, her other palm light against my shoulder. I could feel the careful distance she kept, and somehow that distance was a kind of heat. We didn't pretend to be in love. We pretended to be two people who knew how to be looked at without being eaten. Your heart is trying to run, she whispered. So is yours, I said. We turned, and there they were, Lila and Owen, propped at the bar, watching us with faces working hard at casual. Lila lifted her glass in a little toast, the kind you give to a performance you don't understand yet. Owen's mouth had that half-smile it gets when he's about to say something that makes everyone in the room want to be the room. Clara's breath brushed my neck. It announced itself as a request and then behaved. If this is a bad idea, she said, we can stop having it. The song ended. We stepped apart, both of us already missing the reason the room had made sense for a moment. At the bar, Lila caught my eyes as if they were thrown and she was expected to catch them. Here, she asked when we were close enough to clip our voices. Now. Here, I said, now. Owen folded his arms. The seams in his jacket tried to smile. You two out celebrating something? He asked. Clarity, Clara said. Lila set her glass down with a sound that could have been a choice. Let's not do this like strangers, she said. Then don't, I said. We took a service hallway to the side door. The Dahlias backstage had beige walls and carpet that tried to absorb sin. We stood near a red exit sign that kept promising something. For a second, no one spoke, and the quiet made witnesses of us all. I didn't sleep with him, Lila said, voice low but not trembling. I wanted to feel like someone saw me and wanted to keep starring. I fed that one until it looked like a plan. That's on me. Owen inhaled like he had lines. Clara didn't let him deliver them. You brought it to a hotel, she said. You didn't bring it home and name it out loud. It was the after, Owen said. Everyone was here. Everyone is not the word you think it is, Clara said. Everyone didn't end up on a service landing deciding how much to ruin. Lila's eyes were on me. I could read the pages turning. She has never liked being caught. She has never enjoyed being wrong. She looked now like a person who had passed a mirror and not recognized the stranger at first and then decided to be honest. Eli, she said, tell me what hurts so I can decide what to do with it. It's the key, I said, and my voice surprised me by staying whole. Not just this little rectangle, the part of you that slid it under my pillow like it belonged with us, the part that wanted me to find it or wanted me never to. She nodded once slowly, absorbing the precision of it. I'm sorry, she said, for the part that loved the danger more than the person I brought it home to. The air changed, like a door opened somewhere else, and Owen stepped forward with his hands up, a parody of peace. We're adults, he said. We can admit we liked how we looked in each other's light. That doesn't mean we lit a match. Clara took a step toward him. You left breadcrumbs, she said, each syllable like a small glass. You wanted applause for how carefully you weren't touching. He tried to laugh. It sounded like a hinge that needed oil. Can we be finished now? We haven't even started, I said, and heard how calm I sounded. We're going home, separately. We are going to tell the truth in rooms without velvet. Clara looked at me with an expression that recognized something. She turned to Owen. You can send for your things tomorrow, she said. I will put them in a box that does not require me to think about you while I tape it shut. For a moment, he looked younger than his cologne. Then he nodded once and stepped back into his jacket like it could protect him. Lila touched my wrist, brief as a second chance. Eli, please. Come home, I said. If you're coming home to us and not to the story of what almost happened. We didn't ride the elevator together. Clara and I took the service stairs. On the first landing, she stopped and leaned her head against the cool painted cinder block. Her eyes closed, and when she opened them, I saw both fire and water. Thank you, she said, for not making me be the only brave person in the hallway. I didn't feel brave, I said. I felt like a man who didn't want the worst version of himself to have the night. We stood there and let our breathing align. It happened without a plan. I reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She leaned into the touch as if it had been waiting. When I bent and our mouths met, the kiss was not a weapon. It was a question we both knew the answer to and chose not to say out loud. Her hand found my jaw. Mine found the small of her back. We pressed close enough to remember we were made of heat and thought, and then we stopped, because stopping was the proof we needed. She smiled at me with her mouth and then again with her eyes. If I'm ever asked what saved me from making a spectacular mistake, she said, I will say a man kissed me like a promise and let me go like a gentleman. Keep that line, I said, bill me later. On the sidewalk, the air had cooled into something we could stand inside without holding our breath. Lila was waiting near the corner, bareheaded, looking like the city was a book she was willing to reread from the beginning. She came to my side without grabbing my arm. Home, she asked. Home, I said. We walked without speaking. At the apartment, we didn't open a bottle or put music on. We sat at the table and let the quiet settle like dust on a windowsill. Lila reached for my hand and then withdrew it, like she was remembering the rules and wanting to respect them. I thought I needed to be hunted, she said. It turns out I needed to be found at home and asked if I still wanted to live here. I do, I said, but I need the corners named. I need the places where we almost fell to be marked with tape. We can do that, she said. We can live in a room with tape for a while. We can learn not to trip. We did not fix everything that night. We put it on the table and turned it in our palms and agreed which angles cut us. We promised to say more when compliments were due and when they weren't, to tell each other when we felt invisible before we hired someone else's eyes. We slept in the same bed, not because a bedtime story had made us believe in magic, but because our bodies know the map of this mattress and we needed to remember the route. In the morning, the key lay where I had left it, on the counter, quiet as a coin. I put it in the drawer where we keep warranties and proof, not as a trophy, not as a threat, but as a note. The night we didn't become people we'd be ashamed to name. Clara texted me a single line at lunch. I ordered a box. I typed back. I bought tape. She sent a simple heart, the color of a sunset you aren't staying to watch. It felt like closure and possibility both, which is to say it felt like being alive. Weeks later, I walked past the dahlia on my way to a shoot. The doorman nodded again as if we shared history. I looked up toward Lilt and thought of the dance we invented to make liars work harder. When I got home, Lila was barefoot in the kitchen, hair down, wearing one of my shirts like it might tell the truth better than hers. She turned when I stepped in, and the way her eyes warmed felt like being invited to stand close to a fireplace. "What?" she asked, smiling. "Nothing," I said and set my camera on the counter. "Everything." I stepped behind her and wrapped my arms around her waist, fitting my hands to the tender, ordinary architecture of us. She leaned back into me, and we stood like that while the kettle worked, letting steam do what it does, rise and disappear and prove that heat can become air. When we kissed, it was slow and certain, a rehearsal for the next beautiful, ordinary thing. The key slept in the drawer, and I, who had once thought jealousy was a story other people told, learned how to want without breaking, how to forgive without forgetting, and how to keep my hands gentle when they were full of proof.